So for those of you who don't know me, I used to work for AWS for 6 years, most recently managing some of these chuckleheads in the audience here. But one thing you may or may not know about me is that I am a big fan of the author Roald Dahl. I've actually had a Roald Dahl website for coming on 30 years now. And I thought I would start off by telling you about a story he wrote that you may not have heard of. It was written in 1953, over 70 years ago. It was collected in this book. And, the 50s were kind of the dawn of the computer age. Everybody was really excited about the possibility of computers. And so this particular story is about a computer scientist named Adolf Kneipp, who is actually a frustrated wannabe writer, all right? He's writing stories, but he can't get anybody to publish them. He has a genius idea. He goes to his boss and he says, I reckon I can make a computer that can write stories. And so he does this. He has a go, and he comes up with this huge contraption, and it's got like, this button controls the amount of romance, and this knob is the action, and that foot pedal does the mystery. And he churns out a story with it, and a publisher accepts it. And they're like, whoa. So they modify the machine. It can spit out novels. And pretty soon, he and his boss are raking in thousands of dollars. They start their own publishing company. They're spewing out this mass-produced literature. And this is in 1953, he wrote this, remember. And then Kneipp has a genius idea. Why not buy out the competition? Why not go to established authors, real authors, and pay them to never write again, and we'll write on their behalf using the great automatic grammatizator. And so all of Dahl's stories, if you read them, they know I have a bit of a twist in the tale. And so this one comes towards the end as the narrator mentions that in this universe at this point, more than 50% of the literature published in the English language has been written by Adolf Kneipp and his great automatic grammatizator. And the ending of the story is written in first person. And this author is telling you how he's listening to his 9 hungry children crying in the next room, trying to resist the lure of that golden contract sitting on the desk. Lord, give us strength, he prays, to let our children starve. And now I want to show you another work of art. This was a commercial that Google ran during the Paris Olympics, the recent Paris Olympics on TV in America, right? And it's got this cute little girl, and I know some of you in this room have children, and she really idolizes this hurdler on the American track team, Sydney Levrone, somebody or other. And so little girl really wants to be like this runner when she grows up, and she wants to write a fan letter to her favorite athlete, right? And so she goes, Dad, can you help me write a letter? Oh, of course I can. What does he do? He fires up Gemini. I was not the only one to have a problem with this. They had to pull it from TV very quickly. This ad is still available on YouTube. They have turned off the comments. One of my favorite responses here was from Alexandra Petrie in the Washington Post. She said it made her want to throw a sledgehammer through her TV every time she saw it. And I want to quote a bit of this essay because it's really good. What will these buffoons come up with next? Gemini, propose for me. Gemini, tell my parents I love them. Lying on your deathbed, Gemini, write a letter to my children saying all the things I wish I'd been able to tell them. What was my favorite thing about being alive? You're missing it. You're missing all of it. This is the ride. Go home, jump back in the sea, forget it, because this is the ride and you're missing it. And so that's what I'm going to talk about today. I am not here to talk about coding assistants. I am not here to talk about really cool tools that record and summarize your meeting minutes. I'm not here to talk about machine learning algorithms, all that stuff that we've rebranded as AI because that's how you get VC funding these days. I am instead going to be talking about how we as an industry are talking about this technology, specifically generative AI, specifically large language models, with ads like that one for Gemini. What impression are we giving to all those people who do not understand the limitations of this technology? Why do we keep pushing this tech as a replacement for actual human thought, creativity, and interaction? And look, I could go on about all the problems with AI. They have only given me 25 minutes today. Come see me in the break. I'll be happy to go into them. So you're a smart audience. You know a lot of this stuff. I'm going to breeze through it. Like, look, you know you can't trust them not to make stuff up. Every other day there's a court case that doesn't exist or a quote that somebody made up that was never said. This one, I did especially get a chuckle out of this. This was from GPT-5 just in the last week. Greetings to any Tanzanians or Ausrations here today. Yeah, what's even sadder is in the replies, the Tasmanians were just happy to be included. It's actually debatable whether it's making you more productive. I know you think it is because it's Skinner box, and when you push the button, maybe some pellet of something that looks kind of correct comes out. But actually, there have been studies recently, this one came out last month, showing that for experienced developers, even when you think they're saving your time, it could be taking you up to 20% longer to actually do tasks. And you know that the writing it creates is crap, okay? Because it's math. It's trained on a huge corpus, all that data they've sucked up off the internet and out of the books. And so all it can ever do is create average sounding writing, which look, might be great if you're really struggling with writing, if you're dyslexic, if you're a non-native English speaker, that might be an improvement. But if you consider yourself a halfway decent writer, this is only gonna make you sound worse. It's gonna make you sound like LinkedIn. And sadly, people are not just using it to spew out slop on LinkedIn. This is actually from Daniel Stenberg, who's one of the maintainers of curl, you know, that library that like the entire internet runs on. He said that curl's bug bounty program, the amount of slop bug submissions they are getting 2025 is just increasing exponentially to the point, he said he'd reviewed yesterday, he said on Mastodon, he'd reviewed the last 33 bug reports, not a single one of them was actually a valid vulnerability. They're all just cranked out by AI, and they're on the verge of potentially shutting down their bug bounty program. You know that it affects mental health. We have known for years, ever since that poor bastard at Google that we all laughed at, that folks are capable of forming really strong attachments to these chatbots. And it's understandable, right? It goes back to how humans communicate. When I have a conversation with you, my brain is constantly trying to anticipate what your brain is hearing, what assumptions you're making, how you're receiving the message I'm giving you, what you might say next, and trying to anticipate that response. And it is really hard for us to turn that off, especially in the face of a sycophantic, fawning chatbot that tells you you're the best. There are entire subreddits dedicated to people with AI boyfriends and girlfriends. And they all got really mad when ChatGPT 4.0 got deprecated because suddenly their boyfriend went away this week. We know that it's telling teenagers how to kill themselves. I saw a medical journal the other day that talked about a man who presented with sodium bromide poisoning because ChatGPT told him to replace sodium chloride salt with sodium bromide, which can cause really bad psychiatric disturbances. This stuff is actually gonna kill people. And of course, this is the one that really pisses me off. You know it. You know these models are trained on stolen data. They have admitted it. They have been caught torrenting books that would have put you or me, like we would have been in serious legal trouble for that. They've been hiding their user agents. They've been obfuscating their scrapers. They've been disregarding robots.txt. 50% of my blog is scraper bots these days, scraping every image they can get their hand on. And look, maybe you think that's cool. Maybe you think that copyright is an antiquated law anyway, right? Do you happen to know, can anyone guess what the average income for a writer in Australia is per year right now? Just over $18,000 a year. And yet this week, the fourth richest man in Australia, Scott Farquhar, went on TV, and he said he thought it was really cool if the government, if tech companies were allowed to take their IP, not his IP, their IP, these $18,000 a year people, and use it, these billion-dollar companies, use it to train models that they're gonna put into commercial products to make money. And then what's worse, they're gonna use those models to put those writers out of business. We are right back at the great automatic grammatizator again. But, stonks go up, so Scott's gonna be happy. And you know it's an environmental disaster. You know this. I'm not even gonna go into the energy side of things. Water, do you know the water crisis? Within the next 5 years, demand for fresh water is gonna outstrip availability by more than 50%. Okay, just this week, I was telling Mike, there was a drought happening in the UK just this week. The UK government advised that people start deleting old photos and emails that they have to maybe save some water in the data centers. This is like telling you to recycle your cans when big corporations are still spewing out heaps of pollution. That's a drop in the bucket compared to what we know the AI companies are generating. Right now, Greater Western Water in Melbourne is assessing 19 data center applications that are requesting to use a total of nearly 20 gigaliters of water a year. That is the same amount that 330,000 Melburnians used in the last financial year. Are you willing to take fewer showers, to ration your family's drinking water if it means you can still use ChatGPT instead of a Google search? And there are so many more. I don't have time to go into how large language models reinforce biases like ChatGPT, suggesting women negotiate for lower salaries. I haven't talked about slop squatting, where hackers create malicious packages using names that these LLMs commonly come up with when you're just sitting there vibe coding your way into a security nightmare. I can't even begin to go about this week's news about GitHub. Did you not read about this? Microsoft have basically said the quiet part out loud, that basically anything you put up there right now, they're just training their AI on it. And I haven't talked about how Google referrals to websites have plummeted, that more and more sites are getting no traffic, are going to shut down, are going to put up paywalls. Just this week, Reddit said they were going to start blocking the Internet Archive because the scrapers are hitting their content off of that. It's really leading to the death of the open web that I and many of these people in the room actually helped build. And look, if you're one of these sloppers who uses ChatGPT multiple times a day, you either have convinced yourself that somebody else will solve these problems down the track, maybe Sam Altman, maybe AGI will solve it, or you just don't care. And so look, I only have 15 minutes left. I want to talk about the two biggest problems that I have with LLMs these days. I feel really strongly that outsourcing your writing means outsourcing your critical thinking. And look, it would have been very easy for me to prompt ChatGPT or Canva or any number of tools to spit out this talk. I have actually spent a really long time on this. I have been collecting, I have a folder called AI Rant. I've been collecting links for months. I've been reading them, I've been researching this. I had to decide what to keep, what to put in. It might have even looked better. But I think one of the big myths we need to bust about generative AI is this productivity myth, that saving time is always the most important goal, that anything that you spend time and effort on is a candidate for automation, whether that is doing your homework or creating a talk for a meetup or writing a fan letter to your favorite athlete. But the goal of writing isn't simply to churn out pages. You know, the reason we assign essays to students is not because the world needs more shitty takes on Hamlet. We don't. It's because of the process you go through of learning to research an idea, to organize your thoughts, to construct an argument. This practices critical thinking. And that paper you get at the end of it, that's just the end result of that. That page is the end result of thinking about your work, about your words, about why you're writing. And ultimately, writing is a form of thinking that you can share with other people. And to take away your ability to write is to take away the ability to think for yourself. And we desperately need critical thinking skills in Australia and in the world right now. Maybe some of you watched the OpenAI live stream last week announcing GPT-5. This was one of the graphs they showed. Yeah, that blew up. And look, if this is, vibe graphing, at least we should consider ourselves lucky that this was so bad that it was obvious. But think about how many times a day someone tries to persuade you of something with data. Whether that is a government trying to justify the FBI taking over a city, whether that is a politician trying to show you a misleading graph. Think about that. And that is one reason why earlier this year I joined the board of ADSI, the Australian Data Science Education Institute. It's run by Dr. Linda McIver. Some of you may know her. She did the keynote at PyCon last year. She is a data scientist and an educator, and she thinks that we need Australian students, Australian kids, to be data literate. We need them to be data skeptics. We need them to notice when someone is trying to mislead them with a graph. We need them to notice when the axes aren't labeled, when the scales don't line up. And the goal of ADSI is to teach Australia's kids problem solving, critical thinking, data literacy, and STEM skills. And so she's scaling through teachers. She wants to equip teachers with the tools they need to understand this technology and to help kids learn by solving real problems, not just doing exercises out of a textbook. So if you want to help out with ADSI, please go to the website. You can always donate. If you know an educator, if you are an educator, she's got free resources, including a book she's writing, An Educator's Guide to AI, that you can have a look at. They're all free to use. So that's the first big problem I have with LLMs. The other big problem I have with generative AI is about art and and creativity. Creativity and communication are at the heart of what it means to be a human being. And these tools reduce everything down to autocomplete. A large language model does not experience emotions or accountability for what it produces. It doesn't use the language the way a human being, the way you or I do. They don't participate in social interaction, and they have nothing at stake. Standing in front of you today, I have to kind of consider my words here. I know that some of you are probably all in on this technology. Some of you are probably big fans of it. I have to take a social risk. I have to consider how my argument is going to be received. I have to think about how you might disagree with me, how I frame my points, how it might actually make you think differently about me after this. You might not like this talk. But these ambiguities, these tensions, these frictions, these are at the heart of human communication. We need these frictions to resolve disagreements, to have in-depth understanding of topics, to get along as a society. But LLMs don't do that. Nothing is risked by ChatGPT when it gives you text in response to a prompt. It seeks nothing more than tokens concatenated into grammatically sound output. There is no intention to communicate, it's just autocomplete. And I think that carries through to art too. This was an article last year written by the author Ted Chiang in The New Yorker. It's really fantastic long-form piece. And I'm not just saying that because he also used the great automatic grammatizator. I thought of it first, by the way, but that just shows you how we're thinking the same. He argues that art is something that results from making a lot of choices, a human being making a lot of choices. And at a very simple level, in a painting, that means where you put the next brushstroke. When you're writing a story, what's the next word? That's a choice you have to make. And so when an AI generates a 10,000-word story based off a 100-word prompt that you put in, it has to fill in for all the choices you're not making. You're only putting in 100 words, it's generating 1,000. So how is it? There are a couple different ways that it can fill in for those choices. One way is to take an average of all the choices that everybody else has made, as represented by that huge corpus of internet text, of books that it's torrented, and just average those out. And that average, of course, is equivalent to the least interesting choices that you might have weighed. That's why AI text is always bland. That's why it's LinkedIn, right? Another option it could do is you could instruct the program to actually engage in style mimicry, to emulate the choices made by a specific writer, whether or not, of course, they've consented to this, which produces a highly derivative story. Again, it's not interesting art. And the same thing goes for visual art as well. And look, I know that there are arguments to be made that these are just tools that artists will come to use, like how cameras were. And actually, please, if you want to talk more about this, we can talk about it. He talks about it in the piece as well. Ultimately, like Chiang boils it down to, the selling point of generative AI is that these programs generate vastly more than you put into them. After all, if you had to write a 10,000-word prompt to generate a 10,000-word story, you wouldn't do it, right? So that is why he says these are never going to be used for creating effective art. I would also argue to you that people using LLMs for writing and for art means that they never get any better at it themselves. Many of you have probably heard of NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month. This happens every November, and it's for those wannabe writers like Adolf Kneip, and it challenges them to write a novel in the month of November. And last year, it was sponsored by an AI writing tool, and suddenly the rules changed, and it became, hey, everybody, it's cool to use AI now to write your novels. And that went over about as well as a lead balloon, as you might imagine. They had to backtrack feverishly. Many of the board members resigned. One of the board members who resigned in protest said, NaNoWriMo at its heart encourages people to set aside a time to do a daily writing practice, to push through barriers of self-doubt, fear, boredom, writer's block, and to fearlessly write badly. Promoting the use of AI is taking away the most important part and replacing it with something weird and terrible. The output is not the goal. The practice and the effort are what's important. And someone who would agree with that is Nick Cave, famous Australian Victorian muso. Nick Cave, if you don't know, has a website called the Red Hand Files where he answers emails that his fans send to him. And in 2023, someone sent him a song and said, hey, Nick, I prompted ChatGPT to write a song in the style of Nick Cave. What do you think of this, right? And Cave says, well, actually, sadly, many people have done this. And without fail, all of the songs suck. He calls it replication as travesty, saying that it could in time, perhaps in time, create a song that is on the surface indistinguishable from an original, but it will always be a replication, a kind of burlesque. For Cave, songs arise out of suffering, out of the complex internal human struggle of creation. Thanks for the song, he said, but with all the love and respect in the world, this song is bullshit, a grotesque mockery of what it is to be human. And that brings us to Studio Ghibli. Its founder, Hayao Miyazaki, is 84 years old, still with us, is known for his fantastical hand-drawn approach, his powerful storytelling. His movies helped take anime away from something just aimed at children, have really powerful themes about environmentalism and the natural world. And in 2016, in a meeting, he was shown an AI animation demo. And Miyazaki-san famously responded, I am utterly disgusted. If you want to make creepy stuff, he called it, you can go ahead and do it. I would never wish to incorporate this technology in my work of art at all. And yet this year, OpenAI, ChatGPT, released a version that let you generate images in Miyazaki style. He didn't consent to that. He didn't agree with that. It was basically a complete fuck you to this man who devoted so much of his art to the world. And how many people in this room tried it out? How many people in this room used it to create crap images for LinkedIn? I know because I saw them. The US government used it to create an image of deporting an immigrant. Like, I cannot think of something more insulting for this artist, for this great man. So now I've bummed you all out. So where does this actually leave us as an industry, as people who make your livings out of this tech? What do I actually want you to take away from this when you sit down at your computers next week? I want you to think about how you're using these services. Yes, some of them are fun. I'm not gonna lie and say I haven't taken a picture and turned it into a superhero or played around creating a funny image for a meetup, of course. But I have a lot of friends who are artists and writers. I bet you do too. How do your artist friends think about generative AI? Do you think it devalues? Do they think it devalues what they do? Are you using AI-generated content for commercial purposes, making it harder for real artists to actually earn a living? And if you're someone, and there are so many people who have started outsourcing all of their writing to ChatGPT, are you also outsourcing your thinking? Are you prioritizing the output over the practice and the effort? What distinguishes your communication from anybody else's? How are you going to get better, develop your own voice, your own style, your own critical thinking skills if you aren't practicing? And what example are you setting to your kids? And if you are an artist, a writer, a creative person of any kind, I urge you to look at the platforms you're using and see how they are appropriating your content. You might want to look to put some mitigation in place and come talk to me because I'm trying to do that too. Now, if you're working on AI projects, and there are so many valid use cases, like I said, there are still valid use cases. I want you to think about the systems you design and build. If you're training models, do you know where your training data set has come from? Is there any stolen material in it that could expose you to litigation? This is a very real risk right now. If you're training on your customers' data, is that an opt-in process? Or have you got a dark pattern where you've hidden the opt-out several menus deep? And yes, I am talking about LinkedIn here. If you're running a web crawler, does it adhere to the robots.txt standard? Are you actually allowing people to opt out of scraping? Do you actually need to jam an LLM into this? Would a simple machine learning algorithm work just as well? Are the architectures you're building like sustainable and efficient, or are you contributing to this massive energy and water crisis that we are facing right now? Or are you just vibe coding your way into tech debt and security problems down the track? And if you're a leader, and there are some leaders here today, are you seeing the actual ROI on these projects? Or are you just doing it because the board is telling you you have to, because you need that sparkly logo on your app somewhere? If not, you should be pushing back. And lastly, on all of us, we need to be deliberate about how we talk about AI. On LinkedIn, to our family and friends, in our talks and our videos. What story are we telling? We know the limitations of this technology. You need to not gloss over it for everybody else. You know that LLMs do not reason. They are not sentient. We should not talk about them like they are. We should be sensitive to the people who are being disrupted and recognize what is lost when people are made redundant. We should make sure that our marketing highlights the right use cases and we aren't overstating the benefits. And we should never, ever try to sell this as a replacement for human creativity and connection. And to finish up, obviously this is something I feel really passionate about, personal about. I consider myself a creative person. I am a writer, I'm a reader, I'm a crafter. That's one of the reasons this year the other board I joined is the State Library of New South Wales. That's their logo there. I'm trying to help them preserve Australian stories and culture. They've just announced a big partnership with the Sydney Writers' Festival to try to give more paid opportunities for those writers, since it seems like so many people in this country think it's okay to just steal their output. And I urge you to talk to your own library, your own state library as well. But it just really kills me to see people gleefully using the plagiarism machine to crap out something generic and impersonal. Stop making shitty AI art. Make real shitty art. I will help you. I will love to see that. That's so cool. Practice until you get better at it. Or if you need something, commission an artist for it. They're out there. They would love to get paid to do art for you. And while we're at it, stop using AI as a therapist, okay? You're in tech. You can afford to get a real therapist. Stop using it to tell your kids bedtime stories. Stop using it to write eulogies or wedding vows. And yes, people are actually doing this. Go touch grass and remember what it means to be a real, actual, thinking, breathing human being. And for the love of God, do not create images or words in the style of Miyazaki or any other artist who has not given you consent, and share that shit on LinkedIn, because people are judging you for it and I am judging you for it. My firm belief is that we in this room, as leaders in this industry, we have a responsibility to not just be uncritical enthusiasts about this technology. We need to make sure our customers, our colleagues, our family and friends, the general public understand the problems and the limitations involved. We need to make sure the products we build off the back of it are sustainable and have guardrails. We need to stop suggesting it be used for everything and anything. And we definitely shouldn't be teaching our kids that the best way to write a fan letter to their favorite athlete is to fire up a chatbot. Thank you.